Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping headfirst into one of the most contentious, high-stakes, and frankly, costly issues in all of tanker chartering, demurrage. Now, it's a word that can make a charterer's blood run cold. But believe it or not, in some markets, it can actually be more profitable for a shipowner than the voyage itself. Take a look at this number, $50,000. What would you do with an extra 50 grand? Well, in the world of shipping, that's not what you get. It's what you could end up paying every single day. That's the kind of demurrage rate we're talking about for a very large crude carrier, a VLCC, just stuck waiting for a berth. The financial stakes are just massive, and they tick up hour by hour. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Demurrage is a total double-edged sword. For a charterer, it is an absolute profit killer that can just sink the economics of a voyage. But for an owner, well, it can be a profit-saving compensation for delays that they had absolutely nothing to do with. Okay, so to really get a handle on this battle, you first have to know the rules of the game. And it all boils down to two fundamental concepts: laytime and demurrage. So first up is laytime. The easiest way to think about this is it's the prepaid free time that the charter has to get their job done. Loading or discharging the cargo. It's the time that's already baked into the freight rate. It's basically their grace period. And what happens the second that free time runs out? Boom, that's when demurrage kicks in. Now, this isn't just some made-up fee. Legally, it's what's called liquidated damages. It's the penalty pre-agreed in the contract and paid per day for keeping the owner's multi-million-dollar asset waiting around. So, to put it really simply, laytime is the plan. Demurrage is the penalty for when that plan goes off the rails. One is your allowance, the other is the big bill you get for going over it. But here's the thing. This very expensive clock doesn't just start ticking all by itself. It has to be triggered. And that trigger is a single, incredibly important legal document called the Notice of Readiness, or NOR for short. Now, handing over a valid NOR isn't just some formality. It is a super strict four-part test. First, the ship has to have arrived at the right place. Second, it has to be physically and legally ready in all respects. Third, the notice has to be properly served. And fourth, any free notice period, usually something like 6 hours, has to pass. Only when all four of these conditions are met does that laytime clock officially start ticking. Get even one of them wrong, and a huge claim can be completely invalid right from the get-go. But wait, there's a bit of a legal trap here for charterers. What happens if an owner gives a notice that's actually invalid? Say the ship isn't really ready. Well, if the charterer just starts loading the cargo anyway without saying anything, they can accidentally validate that faulty notice. This whole principle comes from a famous case called the Happy Day, and it basically means your silence can cost you a fortune by starting that very expensive clock by mistake. All right, this is where we get to the absolute core of the conflict, the delay blame game. Because when things inevitably go wrong, the charter party, the contract, is what decides who pays the bill. It's all about how risk is allocated, and this table really lays out the contractual battleground. Just look at how the risk is split. Port congestion, if you're using a common charter party form like ASBAT Tank VI, that's squarely the charterer's problem. But a vessel breakdown? Nope, that's on the owner. The really crucial detail here is that the fine print is everything. For example, a charterer who negotiated a shell voy form might get some relief for bad weather, but under ASBAT Tank VI, they probably wouldn't. It all comes down to the details. And this one clause, reachable on arrival, which you'll find in ASBAT Tank Voy's Clause 9, is where so many charterers get burned. It was confirmed in the case the Laura Prima, and it's what they call an absolute warranty. If that berth is occupied or unreachable for any reason when the ship gets there, even just heavy port congestion, the charterer is in breach and that clock starts ticking against them immediately. It's not a completely one-way street, though. If the delay is the owner's fault, let's say slow pumping or an equipment failure, the laytime clock stops. But, and this is a big but, the burden of proof is on the charterer. And you better believe that proof needs to be solid. We're talking detailed logs from the statement of facts, pump rate records, every single email and message with the master. Without that concrete evidence, the claim just isn't going to stick. So what happens when the laytime runs out and the charterer has lost the blame game. Well, that's when we start calculating the final bill. And this part is governed by a pretty relentless principle: the unstoppable clock. This brings us to a foundational saying in shipping law: once on demurrage, always on demurrage. What it means is that once all the free laytime has been used up, most of the exceptions that could normally pause the clock, things like bad weather or weekends, they just don't apply anymore. Unless you have a very specific, specially negotiated clause in your contract, that meter just keeps on running 24/7. But is that demurrage bill the only thing a charterer has to worry about? For years, this was a massive debate in the industry, but it was recently settled by a landmark case, the Eternal Bliss. The Court of Appeal's final ruling was crystal clear. Demurrage is an exclusive, all-in-one remedy for the ship being delayed. Owners can't just tack on other claims, like for cargo damage from the same delay, unless they can prove a totally separate breach of the contract. So, knowing all the rules and all the risks, how can you actually play this game to win, or at the very least, cut your losses? Let's take a look at the playbook for both sides to manage demurrage way more effectively. Okay, if you're a charterer, your strategy is all about defense. First, you have to scrutinize every single notice of readiness. If there's any doubt about its validity, reject it immediately, or at the very least, reserve your rights in writing. Document any potential owner's fault, like your life depends on it. And that last point is so important. Do your negotiating before you sign. Can you add a weather clause? Can you get a half demurrage rate for certain delays? A few words changed in that charter party can literally save you a fortune. Now, for the owners, it's all about playing offense, but an offense built on absolutely pristine records. Your vessel has to be 100% ready before you even think about tendering that NOR. Your statement of facts, the SOF, that's your Bible. If time isn't logged correctly and signed by everyone, your claim is weak from the start. Your goal is to build a claim that is so robust and well-documented that it's just impossible to argue with. At the end of the day, demurrage isn't just about an invoice. It's a contest of time, of risk, and of contractual know-how. It's a high-stakes game where every single hour has a massive price tag. So the only question left to ask is, are you playing to win?